going on, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Unlockables podcast, the story of video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. As always, I'm your host, Eric. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. Wherever, whenever, in time and space you might be located. It means so much that you're checking out the show and giving us some of that support. We love it so much. But we're not going to waste too much on the niceties because we've got a great episode today. If you haven't seen by the title of the episode, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite games, and a game that I've mentioned a couple times here on the episodes, Majesty, the Fantasy Kingdom Sim. A little known title from the 2000s in the era where RTS titles and Sims were all the rage. And I actually couldn't do this one on my own. And I actually found a couple of kindred spirits in the podcasting world who knew and loved this game as much as I did. So, of course, I had to bring them on. And I sent out the call to the neighboring kingdom of your friendly neighborhood gamers and got a response from my good friends Andrew and Dylan. Guys, how are you guys doing today?
Oh, I'll go first. We were both looking at each other. So, yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited to get on here and talk some Majesty. It's always installed. I'm always playing it, off and on. But it was nice to like have an excuse, I guess, to kind of like get back into it and like play through some of the campaign missions and stuff again. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I figured I would let Dylan go first because I think he's probably a more hardcore Majesty fan. Like I grew up with it. It's a very nostalgic game for me, but I don't actively play it nearly as much as he does. So that's why I wanted him to have the honor of speaking first on the episode.
Yeah, so just to give the people a little bit of a background, I think when I originally came on your guys' show, when you launched your Friendly Neighbor Gamers the first time, I think we were just kind of spitballing and somebody just made kind of a off random comment about Majesty. And I was like, no way that I found the only two other people on the internet that may or may not have played this game and have experiences with it. So if that didn't solidify our bond, right away, just being podcasters, Majesty definitely did that. So
yes.
It was always kind of in my plans for, I guess this is kind of like Unlockables Season 2, but it's not like, I'm not branding it that. But when I'm coming back from my hiatus, I knew I was like, okay, Andrew and Dylan have to come on and we have to talk about this weird game from 2000, and
yes.
That's kind of how we ended up here. But before we do that, I just wanted to touch base with you guys and get a little bit of an update. Andrew was on for my 12 games of Christmas to talk about Horizon Forbidden West. That was a lot of fun, but I just wanted to talk to you guys and see what you've been up to. What have you guys been playing and checking out, and how are things going at your friendly neighborhood gamers?
Sure.
All the questions at once, any order you want to answer them.
All right. Yeah. I mean, things have been quiet on my end. Very, just kind of normal, I guess.
Normal's good.
Yeah. But it's been fun. We just recently hit 50 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. We just recently hit like a year of, like, we've been working on stuff for more than a year, but like a year of actually being launched at the time that we're recording this. And so it's been cool to kind of look back and see how like Neighborhood Gamers has grown and kind of how we've changed it and evolved it even just in that time period. But yeah, so that's been fun. Other than Majesty, I've been playing a lot of Marvel's Midnight Suns. I picked that up.
Very nice.
Been having a lot of fun with that. Kind of that sort of tactics, card-based, like it's a very hard game to describe because it's like XCOM but not, and it's like Fire Emblem but not, and it's like Slay the Spire but also not, and so, but it is a really like. I went into that game with expectations, and it is completely different from a lot of those expectations, but it's also, I'm really happy with it. Like I wasn't quite sure what to expect going into it beyond just like, it's made by the XCOM people and it's Marvel superheroes. And those, like the expectation of that game is not what it is, but it is a really fun game that I'm enjoying so far. So.
Yeah, I've pretty much everybody that I've talked to, and honestly, the buzz around this game was bigger than a lot of people I thought like not as many people got it as the buzz was around it. So
yeah,
everybody I've talked to said like it's a really great game. So I think more people should probably definitely be picking it up, myself included, which I plan to do because that sounds right up my alley. All of those things tossed in a blender, love them all. Just got done playing just dove into Slay the Spire a couple weeks ago, and that's kind of devoured my life. So if it's got those elements combined with the XCOM, combined with all that stuff you said, I think that's a purchase for me for sure. So yeah, hey people, if you want more games like this, go out and support it, and so that the developers will make more. If it's that good. So Andrew, what about you, man? What have you been up to?
Yeah, echoing Dylan about what's going on in the neighborhood. Things have been going really well, and yeah, we're very happy and excited to have hit that milestone. And I personally am very excited for some of the stuff that we have slated for this year. Again, we're not branding it as like a season 2, but going into this next year, I think that some of the content we've got planned is going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for people to hear it. As far as what I've been playing personally, I've been dabbling in quite a few things, but what's been eating up a lot of my time is the next gen Witcher update that they put out.
Absolutely.
So I'm back in on The Witcher. I got the complete edition on sale at some point, so it's like it's all the achievements have to be re-unlocked, so it's kind of like a fresh playthrough. And just kind of there's little things here and there in this update that make it kind of fresh again. I guess they've adjusted like the camera perspective, which makes it feel a little bit different. There's some obviously like visual upgrades and things like that. They've tweaked dialogue here and there. They've, just it's a lot of little things across the board that I don't think casual people would necessarily pick up on. But as somebody who's played the game like 5 or 6 times at this point, it's cool to see those kind of little tweaks here and there. And then occasionally there'll be stuff that I miss, but I'm like watching a lot of videos and content about it too, like kind of as I'm playing. And it's like, oh yeah, I do see what you're saying there. That's really cool. It's really cool to see CD Projekt Red still investing that much like love and care into this game. And we know they're making new ones, new Witcher games down the line, but to still be putting this much into the game that came out in 2015, it's really cool to see. You can tell that they're passionate about the property.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about the next gen update. I'm sure it looks absolutely gorgeous and stunning. And man, I gotta tell you, anytime I see like a big game sale, I for some reason see like the complete Witcher edition or Witcher 3 edition like on sale. And again, I'm just gonna tell everybody this because I tell everybody to do this. Like, if you can pick up like The Witcher 3 for like $10 and it's got all the content, your value on your return is so great. Like absolutely do that. There's absolutely no reason not to, because that game is on sale. Like every single time there's a big sale, I think I see it on sale. So
for sure.
That's good. And I definitely like to tell you guys, congratulations on that 50 episode milestone. It seems like just yesterday,
right? I
connected with you guys, and I was listening to you guys all last year, and now it's 50 episodes later. Like
exactly, yeah,
dude, time flies, and
it's crazy.
I'm definitely excited to see what you guys got in store for 2023. So, thank you for sharing, and everybody go check out Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers. It's definitely worth your time. With that being said, why don't we jump into the game of the hour? And like we said at the top, that game is, of course, Majesty, the Fantasy Kingdom Sim. Better off known as Majesty shorthand. This one was developed by Cyberlore Studios and published by Hasbro Interactive under their video game publishing arm, Microprose, for Windows in March of 2000, with a Mac port in December of the same year. Received an expansion, the Northern expansion, in March of 2001. Came out with a complete edition called Majesty Gold in 2002, and then it was re-released by Paradox Interactive as Majesty Gold HD in 2012, which is the Steam version that I own. I'm pretty sure it's probably the way most people are playing this game.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when Paradox bought it, they Like there was something where I owned a copy of it before they bought it, and it has merged into this copy. Like it is now this copy. So I think this is the only one that's available anymore.
Interesting. That explains a lot because, yeah, I have like two, when I bought the game, I have like 2 copies of it in my Steam library for some reason. And it's like a Majesty Gold and then a Majesty Gold like HD, and only one of them has like the cover art. So that might explain why some of that weirdness happens. So interesting tidbit about Cyberlore. They are rebranded today under the name Minerva, and they focus on serious games for corporate training.
Ooh, so fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a long way from making Fantasy Kingdom Sims. Now you're making it about safety in the workplace and HR and whatever, all that. That sounds terribly exciting. I'd like to see what that looks like. So
No, you wouldn't.
no, probably not. It's probably not exciting at all.
You've probably seen it.
Yeah, probably. If it's alongside like those terrible like forklift training videos
Exactly.
or all those funny ones we've seen. So they probably had a hand in it. Just a couple other notable cyber lore titles. If you're not familiar with them, you might be after this list of games. Probably not. Cyberlore, otherwise known as a studio that only made games with colons in them. Some of their titles: Al-Qadim, The Genie's Curse, Entomorph, Plague of the Darkfall, Warcraft 2, Beyond the Dark Portal, Heroes of Might and Magic 2, The Price of Loyalty, Deadlock 2, Shrine Wars, Majesty, MechWarrior 4, The Black Knight, and MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, Risk Global Domination, and Playboy the Mansion, which was a 2004 sim game based on the life of Hugh Hefner. And this game was as successful as you could probably imagine. I went down a really deep rabbit hole on that one specifically while doing notes for this game, which might be a separate episode. So, but we won't talk about that. Yeah. Like you guys were talking about a little bit, Paradox is still an active publisher in Sweden today. They're traded publicly on the market. They're known for things like City Skylines, Crusader Kings, Hearts of Iron 4, and they helped Obsidian publish Pillars of Eternity and Tyranny. I had to dig really deep on Paradox's website to find Majesty. The gold edition is like on the last page of their game section, and Majesty isn't even mentioned in their brand section. So I think that probably tells us where Majesty stands in their portfolio, unfortunately. And just to give a couple of review scores here, 4 out of 5 stars on Computer Gaming World, 82% PC Gamer, 3 out of 5 stars Next Generation, and Computer Games Magazine, 2.5 out of 5 stars.
Wow.
So, yeah, little bit of range here on the reviews. And the only other thing of note, there was a sequel, Majesty 2, The Fantasy Kingdom Sim, September of 2009. Had generally positive reviews, but nothing else has really been done with Majesty since then, except they ported it to mobile. So with all of that being said, now that you are an expert on Majesty, a game that you probably never thought you'd be an expert in, just wanted to ask you guys, what was a little bit of your history with the game and how did you guys come to interact with it?
I honestly don't really remember how I got Majesty. It's one of the first like PC games that I ever played. It was like this, some like knockoff BattleBots like Robot Wars game, and like NHL 99. Those were like my 3 original like PC games. And
that's a pretty good mix.
I feel like this probably was just like, back in the day. I guess they still have it in like Walmart. But like those little like CD case sized, jewel case sized like PC games that are like $10 or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So it was probably like when I was like a little kid, height of, 2000, 2001, height of Lord of the Rings, in the US. And so it's like, okay, like I was at the right age. This is a fantasy kingdom sim, like checking all the boxes for me as a kid. And so I probably got that with some, money from mowing lawns or something. And then, have been playing it pretty much ever since, off and on. Just because it's one of my favorite like PC games, and it's one of the most unique PC games that I feel like I've ever played, because I've talked about it on our show some, but I don't feel like I've found another game that like scratches a lot of the same itch as this game, like has that same vibe. So, that's kind of, I guess, how I got introduced to it. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, for me, it was the demo, and I have no idea how or why, but the demo was just always on the computer when we were growing up. So it was like, it was just always there. And as soon as it was me and my sister really that kind of got into it. And as soon as we were old enough to play around with it, we did. And I think the demo let you do like the first maybe couple story missions, and it lets you do just a handful of the classes and stuff. So eventually, after getting like mastering the demo, because we just played it over and over and over and over because we had so much fun with it, we got our hands on the main game, and it was like this transformative experience, unlocking the rest of the classes and guilds and all the other missions and maps and stuff. It was like, did you see that there's like these witches that you can have? And like, you know, just, it was crazy because in the first couple of missions, you really only get to play with like the warriors and the rangers and, you know, a couple of the other. And so having full access to all the content in the game it was a magical moment as a kid. And we played that game a lot in those days. It was probably one of us was like almost always playing it in our free time. And then it has not stayed installed. It's not something that I consistently play, but I did pick it up on Steam. I have the same version that you were talking about, Eric, and I go back to it every now and then. I get the itch, and then, you know, this episode was a great excuse to jump back in, and a lot of that nostalgia immediately came rushing back, and it was like, oh yeah, there's just something. It's not an overly complex game. It was pretty, you know, different and unique for its time, but now it's not overly complex, but there's just like a certain charm to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. And it does, yeah, I will admit it doesn't always stay installed on mine, but thankfully the small file size makes it a pretty quick install. So you can add or remove it if you need just a little bit of extra space. But yeah, my story's, I guess, pretty similar. I was introduced to it to my cousin who, when I was younger, just kind of seemed to have access to more games than me. And he showed me this game. And for whatever reason, I was hooked immediately. Probably because at the time, too, I was also playing. I'd just been introduced to Age of Empires. So that was kind of a big thing. And one of the few computer games that I had growing up. And I'd also been introduced to at that time, RuneScape. You know, good old RuneScape on the dial-up internet, where if you're playing, your mom can't get phone calls. The kids today won't understand the struggle for sure. But that's kind of, and so once my cousin introduced it to me, he kind of gave me the disc and said, go home and install it and stuff. And for whatever reason, I remember this, like back then I was always like, oh, you always have to have the disc to play the game. And so I'd always put the computer disc in to play whatever game I was playing. And I remember I was able to install this and actually give the disc back to him, and it didn't require the disc to play. And I was just kind of like, oh, that's like really interesting. I don't ever remember other games doing that around that time. Like, believe it or not, kids, you used to actually have to have the disc or the cartridge to play the game. Yeah. Like, it's such a crazy concept nowadays. And everything's just, you know, now you don't even need the disc, but they sell a disc, but it's essentially just a digital download code on a CD. So
exactly.
And yeah, like you guys, I've been playing it ever since. And Dylan's exactly right. It's just this kind of like this vibe or this type of game you want to play. And it's not even, when I describe the premise to people, the couple people I've talked about, they're like, oh, so it's like your Age of Empires, or they immediately think of those RTS games from that era, that like the golden age of RTS, your Command and Conquers, your Warcrafts, your Starcrafts. And I was like, well, that's the right idea, but you really can't control anyone. The only thing you can control is like the buildings you put down and then the handful of spells that they give you. And that's kind of immediately where I lose most people, because they're like, oh, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. So diving into like the gameplay part, and that's like the biggest thing. So like, what do you guys think about, essentially your only mechanic is the buildings that you place and the way you kind of create your town, and then everything from your heroes and everything else is pretty much hands off.
Yeah, like that's always been one of the things that I've loved about the game, is because like I like RTSs, but I'm not great at managing, like, you know, multiple things in the air at once. Like, I'm not great at like building my base and like having an army to go on the offensive or whatever. So like when I'm playing an RTS or something like Age of Empires or whatever, it's like, okay, I build up my army, and I take it off. While I'm doing that, I'm not focused on my base, and I'm not like continuing to produce units like I need to, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas this, it kind of frees you up to just kind of focus on building out your medieval city or whatever. And I kind of like the idea of it just kind of being like almost a narrative generator, where it's like, okay, here's my, warrior, and he's slowly leveling up and now he's been around for a while. I can't really control him. I can, try to set some bounties and stuff to encourage him to go do stuff. But it's kind of like, oh, sir, whatever, like, please go kill this vampire. I need you to go kill this vampire. And you're just kind of like watching him and hoping like he's going to decide to go kill that vampire rather than go to the blacksmith and buy a new sword or something like that, Right. And I just kind of like that where it's, you're just kind of observing almost a lot of times. It's like I'm setting up this cool place and these characters are just existing in it, and I get to watch and see how that story develops over the course of the game, So I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As far as the gameplay, I also am a big fan of just traditional RTSs. For me growing up, it was the Stronghold Crusader game, played that a ton. But this was something different, obviously, like we've said. And I remember having it down as a kid, revisiting it over this past week. I was getting pretty cocky on some of the beginner missions because I was going through the story missions. And when I did my first advanced one, I think it was like the Rat King. I was like, I forgot how like brutal this game can be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much happening on screen, and all you can really do is just try to keep people spawning into the world and try to eventually tip the power in your favor on the map. But that initial grind can sometimes be quite a slog. And so I was just getting gnomes slaughtered left and right because they were cheap. And so I'm just like throwing these bad boys out there. And yeah, it's like Dylan was saying, it's really interesting how, even though the game doesn't necessarily do anything to force you or try to entice you, you do kind of look and be like, oh wow, I've had this one particular warrior that's been around for a while. He's got all the best equipment. He's like stronger. He's more powerful. And then he dies. And it actually, it sucks. It's kind of like that XCOM thing where you name your characters and when they die, it's kind of a bummer. And I think that's really unique to this game for this genre. Cause usually it's just another resource in these RTS games. The characters that you're controlling.
Yeah.
It really is like this spectrum, whereas like most video games, like their objective is to like give you control and give you the ability to like exert your will over the game and make your way through the game. Like that is the objective of most video games. And I would say in this early 2000s era where we had like kind of all these RTS and sim games coming out, there was a spectrum of games where that allowed you that control to certain degrees. So like on the one end, you would have like your Age of Empires and your StarCrafts and all that kind of stuff where you had control over everything. You had control over your resources, your guys, where they are moving, all that kind of stuff. You could set all that stuff up. And then in the middle, you kind of had like these sim games, like your Roller Coaster Tycoons and your Sims, where it's like you had a certain degree of control, but you could also just kind of sit things down and leave them. And then on the most extreme opposite end of that spectrum is Majesty, where it's like you only have the ability to set down like your core buildings, and then things kind of happen in response to the buildings that you set down. And you're right, it does create like this very narrative experience for like your kingdom specifically, where it's like, oh, it's been a few minutes and I've placed some buildings and I feel good, like I'm building up my kingdom and I'm collecting money. And I experienced the same exact thing Andrew did going through some of the earlier missions. I was like, yeah, like this is great. Like I remember I'm so good at this game. And yeah, when you hit those advanced missions and like you have like the couple of minutes to build up and then the waves of enemies start coming.
Yep.
It's this really unique feeling that I haven't really gotten from any other video game before, where it's like, okay, you've built your town and built your stuff. Now here comes the test of if you did it properly and if your town is ready to survive. And there's no feeling quite like, you're zooming around the map and like you said, your gnomes are dying and your dudes are dying like all over the place and you're getting death notifications and your houses are burning down and
you're running out of money.
Yep.
Yeah. there's no real feeling like that in games that I've experienced before. And there's so much of giving the player control in video games, whereas like Majesty is almost like a lack of control. And it's a really cool, unique experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's just so many things that like you kind of almost take for granted from other like RTS style games that, you know, like a lot of RTS style games will have like either a passive like income or you'll have people in like a resource gathering place. And as long as those people are alive, you know, like in Age of Empires, they're like, you know, at the gold mine, like mining gold or whatever. In this, like you've got a tax collector who has to go around very slowly to like all the buildings in your city.
The slowest thing that's ever been created in video games.
And then come back. And that's the way that you get money. And he's not invincible. So like if you're not doing a good job of protecting your town, you're going to have like a Minotaur or like just a little regular rat just come and kill this guy. And then you don't get more money and you have to like sit there and be like, oh man, like, so it's very like, it's a very interesting way of like, not only is it testing you for like, okay, can your castle survive? But it's like, can you protect like your citizens? Can you protect your little gnome man until they get to like level 10 and can wear armor and stuff like all that kind of stuff. And it I think it offers like some interesting choices throughout too, you know, which is, I think helps give it some longevity because it's like some buildings that you build lock out other buildings. And so it's kind of like, oh, well, what's the best for what I'm doing in this mission or right now? And that can kind of change up drastically sometimes how you are building it and playing it. And I also want to shout out that like most of the missions are fairly short, like even some of the like more advanced ones. It's like, you know, I'm thinking of like my Age of Empires games where I'd like have to save and come back and, you know, still play for another few hours. Whereas this, it's very much just like, hey, do you have like 30 minutes? Like you can knock out a mission. You can knock out like a free play thing. So like that's kind of nice too, that it was more bite-sized.
Yeah, so what happened was, so when you come into my house, you're on like a landing. You can go upstairs to like the main living area or downstairs to like the lower level.
Oh, interesting.
And there's like a ledge on my upper level where you can like peek down. It's kind of like a long drop. And my dogs like to like live on the edge and like look over. And there was a stink bug that was like climbing up the wall and they were freaking the fuck out. And they were like going to like jump over and like commit suicide to try and get the stink bug. So
oh no.
It was on the ceiling, so I had to get a towel and throw the towel up in the ceiling, knock it down, and then kill it.
Yeah.
And now here we are. So, yeah, I might leave that story in because that's interesting. So, apologies.
No problem. Good job doing
apologies.
Your husbandly
that's
duty.
Probably the most unique excuse you'll hear ever for podcasting. So,
yeah, something you mentioned there, Dylan, that I really appreciate, especially going back to it now as an adult and, you know, with family things going on and whatnot, was that those shorter matches. Cause yeah, it was not uncommon for me back in the day I would save my Stronghold Crusader games with a date and like the time so that I knew kind of when I was playing that, and maybe even like a name saying like what I was like going for or what I was doing that game. Whereas with Majesty, I'm sure as a kid, it felt a lot longer and felt, you know, a little bit more involved. But yeah, going back to this, I played my 2 beginner matches and then got killed by the Rat King all in like an hour and a half, you know? So it was pretty respectful of my time, which is something that is pretty unique to this genre.
Yeah, because Paradox's other games, it's like none of those are short. I played a Stellaris game for like 20 hours and it was just a single game.
Like, that was a single game? Oh my God.
Well, Paradox just picked up this. They didn't actually make it, right? That's what we learned at the beginning. So
yeah. So and the reason they never went back to it because they're like, well, it's too short.
Yeah,
so we can't.
Exactly. Let's put it at the very back of our website.
Yeah, exactly. If we make a sequel, you have to have at least 15-hour games, like one session at least. So, yeah, I guess the only comparable thing I would have to is the most recent strategy thing I played some Civilization 6 last year. And those games, depending on how many turns you have, can also go for like 15 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So, Yeah, I found myself, I blew through like all 4 of like the beginner quests in like an hour and a half, and then moved on, or however many beginner quests there were, and then moved on to the more advanced ones. So yeah, thankfully it is a game that does respect your time. But yeah, and I found myself too, since we're kind of talking about gameplay, buildings, all this kind of stuff, throughout those beginner missions, I kind of found myself like going with a specific like build order, because, you know, like we said, the buildings are really the only thing you can kind of control in this game. And so what I found myself doing early is, obviously the game gives you enough gold to kind of get started, and then certain missions will place certain restrictions on you, like, oh, you can't use rangers, or you can't use any of these kind of temples or anything like that. But I always found myself opening up with like at least throwing like 3 guardhouses around, and then putting up like a marketplace and a guardhouse near that, just to kind of like get a little bit of extra protection in town, because you can have arrows on the guardhouses. You can get like veteran guards that are like better city guards that aren't just like fodder for anything that rolls through. And then obviously your market is like important for economy, and you know, economy is probably the thing that most people who come to this game will probably struggle with most, because I found myself, running out of money very quickly, and like pretty much always needing money till like the late mid game, until I kind of started getting things rolling. So and then the things I always prioritized was getting out the Rogues Guild pretty quick, because the Rogues Guild has a cool function where obviously rogues thieve things. They steal from your houses, from grave sites, from enemy territory, things like that. And you can extort gold from the Rogues Guild, which will like collect all the taxable money in your town, but the guild keeps some of it. And that's a quick way to like get money. So those are kind of the things I did early on to like kind of set myself up for success. So was there anything like playing the games that you guys kind of went to earlier, things that you found were successful?
I normally start with either a guardhouse or a warriors guild, and then I put it like right next to my marketplace, so that hopefully, like, because the marketplace is one of the few things that'll have like random enemies spawn near it. Like it will have like a troll occasionally spawn by it, which if you're not careful, if you don't protect your marketplace, that thing will just destroy it pretty quick. And so I always try to throw like a warriors guild down right around there, so that hopefully there's a warrior wandering around somewhere when like if that troll spawns, and they'll go fight the troll and be okay.
Well, and if not,
and it also has a function.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It has the call to arms function where you can pay like 500 gold, and just all of your warriors will get magically teleported to the front door. And so if there's if my marketplace, since like you said, that's the key to the economy, is under attack, and I'm worried that it's going to get killed, like I can just teleport my warriors there and have them kill it. And they're generally like I don't know exactly how like the AI works, but they generally seem like they're programmed to defend the city. So like they'll run away from like fights out in the wild sometimes if they feel like they can't handle it, but in the city they generally don't just like leave enemies running around killing your townsfolk. They'll generally go fight them to the death in the city. So that's generally how I started my build order.
Yeah.
I always built rangers last, because a lot of times they would run away, like they would spread out and explore the map, which meant my other characters would go find things to do outside the map. And I was like, no, while I'm starting, I want you to focus on protecting my town. So
yeah, as soon as you make a ranger, that dude's like, but he just makes a beeline like out into the darkness. He's gone.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm I guess similar to Eric, where I like getting the Rogues Guild up for the extortion, and also because their kind of shtick is that they do stuff for money. So if you need something taken care of, you know, they'll go to a bribe maybe easier than like a warrior who's like, I'm going to follow my honor rather than follow this money or whatever. I always like to get a few guardhouses up with the fully upgraded with the arrows and the tougher guards and stuff. I'm sure that I had like just a perfect system when I used to play this game as a kid. Coming back to it though, I definitely was a little bit more experimental and haphazard because it was a lot of like, okay, what did these guys do again? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. That's not really very helpful right now, but it's cool to see. And so that was why I ended up getting killed by the Rat King, was because I was not ready when that swarm attacked. But yeah, definitely focusing on defense first and anything I can do to get money. So I like to get the blacksmith upgraded if I can, so that all of my warriors and other factions can have the best offense and defense that they can have. Marketplace, get that up for the economy. And then, then it's kind of, once everything is kind of running pretty smoothly, then it's like, all right, let's see what the goal is here and what we need to do, like moving outward from the kingdom.
There is, from based on my research and just experimenting in the game a little bit, kind of like an underlying loyalty system where like the different factions you recruit feel a certain degree of loyalty to your town, depending on how good you're doing, I guess. I don't understand it completely, but like Dylan said, the rogues, like you generally will be able to get them to do stuff for money. Like the warriors will pretty much like throw themselves into harm's way. Like they're pretty honor and loyalty bound. And then the rangers are kind of like a 50-50 toss up. Like if they think there's something that they can't handle, they'll just be like, oh, like I'm out of here. I'll just run off into the wilderness. Like they will 100% do that.
Ooh, tough fight.
Ooh, tough fight.
Yeah. Ooh, tough fight. And the voice lines are iconic, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I found myself, I kind of made that mistake early on the first couple of advanced games. I would build the Rogues Guild and I would build the Rangers Guild because I was like, oh, I need visibility on the map. And and then I spent all my money like setting up all my other stuff like my marketplace and my blacksmith and this stuff to like help out the marketplace can give you healing potions for your heroes and the blacksmith gives them better weapons and armor. And then all of a sudden like a majority of the heroes of my kingdom are people whose like loyalty is like not fantastic, and they're like they're running away, running off into the wilderness, or going to do other things. And I found that screwing me over a couple times as I was like remembering how to play the game. And there's no more frustrating feeling than when you have like people in place that can like realistically handle things, but they don't want to because they're more interested in doing other things. And I think that's another unique thing about this game is like it's kind of an accurate sim, whereas like you have different people living in your kingdom who have different interests and are going to do different things. And yes, despite the fact that like you are the king and you are in charge, you are one person, you can't micromanage everybody and they're kind of off like doing their own things. So yes, you have to incentivize them to like want to help out your kingdom. And like you said, rogues, you can one of the things you can do is like set bounties on people. So if you have like a tough monster, you want them to go attack like a stronghold or an enemy fortress that spawns enemy units, you can double click on it and it'll put an attack bounty flag on it, and you can offer like as much as you want, and then people will start getting interested in that bounty. Amazing how that works, like almost like real life, whereas like you offer people money and they want to do things. So Majesty, way ahead of its time on capitalist conversation. But so I started to switch it up a little bit. Rangers were kind of pissing me off. And then the other thing I found frustrating too was the Wizards Guild. Wizard Guild is great because it gives you spells, but goddamn, wizards are so like made of glass, glass bones and paper skin. So, like until you can get them leveled up, like they will die so fast. I don't know how many times during one mission I heard I'm melting like so many freaking times.
I'm melting.
Yep. Yeah. And for some reason, like it's about 50% of my games, because like as your town gets bigger, like sewer entrances and houses and stuff will just randomly pop up.
Right.
I feel like about 50% of my game, I put a wizard's tower down. And then within like a minute, there's a grate outside of it where rats will come up. And so I'm constantly like losing low level wizards because like they'll walk outside, a rat will just bite them twice and they'll die. Because like you said, they can get super powerful. Like they have, magic shields, and they can call down like a meteor storm if they get high enough level and stuff. And like they can just destroy enemies. If you can ever get them above like level 3. So
which I don't think I ever was able to successfully do in any of my games. The little bit of time I was spending with it, reminding myself for this episode. But yeah, I very clearly remember like when I was playing this game a lot and having the high level wizards, and yeah, once you get them to like a point, it's like a tipping scale, and they'll just roll everything. And especially when you have that library building, which is this, where they can go to and learn new spells, and that's an additional thing that you can build. So really freaking protect your wizards, because but you don't really have a choice, because like I said, everyone just kind of wanders around and does their own thing. And
because that's the problem with them, is like if they would stay in town, cool. They're one of the ones that'll just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like go wander the wilderness with no guard, no escort, nothing.
And if you click on them, it'll literally just say they're wandering, and wizards are slow as fucking. You're like, what are you doing out here?
Yes, yeah, it's just like, stop it, stop. I'm trying to keep you alive. Right. Don't fight this vampire. So
yeah, it's little things like that like this game has a lot of charm, because when everything kind of like rolls and works together, it's really exciting, because you feel like your entire kingdom's coming together to like defend it and defeat like this big evil. But when it doesn't work, it's really stressful, because it seems just like everything is falling apart around you, and your heroes are dying left and right, and there's like nothing you can do about it. And you never seem to have enough money to get yourself out of the rut you need, or the enemies are just spawning and just going after the buildings you specifically don't want or need them to go after, like your marketplace or your more vulnerable buildings. Or I can't count the number of like just peasant homes that were just like burned away before I could even like pay attention, because I was doing something else. But so one of the things we did mention too, a lot of the buildings that you build when you level up the palace are called temples. And temples introduce an interesting mechanic into the game, where if you build certain temples, it locks out other temples, because certain religions argue with each other. Gee, that's kind of like real life too. Who would have thought? So I made a list of like all the temples, and that's where kind of like a lot of the strategy comes in. So you have the Temple to Fervus, which are the cultists, the Crypto, which is the priestess, has to do with death. Doros is the monks, Agrella is healers, Krolm is barbarians, Hela is like the sun god, and then Lunord is like the recruits adepts, who's like the wind god. So were there any of those that you guys were kind of like partial to, or you always like to go for? A lot of the scenarios will lock you out of certain temples, because when you build the temples, they give you spells, and like I could see in some scenarios how some of those spells would like break the scenario. Right. So were there any things that specifically you guys like went to in regards to like that kind of build order?
Sometimes it like my default is generally like Fervus and Crypta, just because I like the cultists can transform into like animals. They're like druids, I guess, in like a D&D type setting, and they can tame animal, like any beast they can tame basically if they get high enough level. And then Crypta, they summon like skeletons, and they can tame like, or like convert vampires if you get them high enough level. So that was generally like my default, but it really depends on like it, like in the missions, it kind of depends. Like if there are a lot of beasts or a lot of undead, I definitely always went Fervus and Crypta, because like not only are they good like at fighting, but they could convert some of those enemies into people on your team, give you more kind of bodies for the various enemies to attack. But there are definitely some that, if it was more limited, or if there were like a bunch of enemies just kind of like sieging my town or something like that, I generally went like Doros and Agrella, because the healers are fantastic. Like any unit can basically take on like any enemy, as long as there's a healer there healing them constantly. And generally the healers they stick around. I think they have like some special ability where if they die, they don't die. They like reincarnate back at their temple based on like the number of levels that they have or something like that. And so they tend to stick around and level up pretty heavily, which can be very nice. But they're basically not offensive at all. I pretty much never built Krolm, just because it locks you out of so many things. Like I like the barbarians, but I pretty much would never build it, because it's just so hard to turn down like 2 temples for one, and and both of those like the 2 temple versions, they give you access to like a different class of warrior. Like Agrella gives you, or Doros, I forget which one it is, gives you paladins, and then Fervus gives you warriors of discord. And so it's like 3 types of heroes that I can't recruit just so I can have a barbarian. And I don't know, like the barbarians were cool because they would like form little adventuring parties, but they weren't cool enough that I was like, but I don't want these other things though.
And the trade-off of that too is, so the temples give you access to spells that you can use. Like you said, when you build the Wizards Guild, you have access to sovereign spells. The temples do that as well. I gotta say, I was a sucker for the Temple of Kralm because it had an ability you could cast called the Rage of Kralm. And essentially what that would do is it would send all of your dudes into a frenzy. And so there's nothing funnier to me than like a lot of the missions have to do with like you have to go and like attack a sorcerer in his castle, or like destroy the enemy bases or whatever. So there's nothing funnier to me than like throwing like a 3,000 bounty on like an enemy thing and then sending all the dudes into a rage and just watch them all go streaking across the map to like to just wipe out whatever they're going to wipe out. But yeah, that trade-off is not sometimes as cool as that is, and as much as I really like having the barbarians are a really strong hero class, yeah, sometimes having the trade-off for those spells is not ideal, because then you're essentially losing access to all the other temples you could get, and that includes like healing spells, and then the temple to Helia. Those units are like really strong, and they'll just go and like fuck shit up if you leave them to their own devices, and that's a lot to sacrifice for just barbarians that are kind of cool sometimes. So Andrew, what about you?
I was going to say, two of the temples have the ability to like resurrect your heroes too. Like Crypta and Agrella, like they can both resurrect heroes, which is very useful once you kind of get your economy a little bit going, because it's like, oh man, like my level 10 ranger died. I'll just pay 1,500 gold and resurrect him. So
Right, because you don't know how many level 1 rangers you're going to have to go through to get another ranger to like level 10. And once heroes get to about level 10, their odds of surviving are a lot better. That's at least what I found. But Andrew, what about you, man?
Yeah, if it wasn't specified by like a mission, I was always kind of drawn to Crypta and Agrella for the healing. Obviously, I really liked having them. But then you mentioned Helia earlier, and that was one of my favorites. Just I liked aesthetically the units that it produced. Like, obviously, I played around with all of them, and in certain scenarios and certain missions, some worked better than others. But like, if I had my choice, or if I was just playing around, like those are the 3 that I would tend to gravitate towards. I can't really remember Lunord that well, but the other ones I remember playing with quite a bit. But having healers, and then the Helia Solari warriors, and then Crypto was just like, aesthetically it spoke to me. So just that gothic aesthetic.
Crypta's very metal for sure. One of the things that I always did was younger, I didn't understand like the economy, but I thought Crypta was so cool because they had like the animate bones spell where you can make like a skeleton warrior. So what I would try to just do is I try to save as much money as possible, and I just make like an army of skeletons just to be like walking around in town. And like that never worked, but a couple of times when I was able to like build up the skeletons to like critical mass, it was just like hilarious just to see like 500 skeletons wandering around town. And then if you were feeling a little cheeky too, there was an easy cheat you could access where if you typed in the chat, you could type in fill this bag and you get 10,000 gold. Which is cheating and frowned upon. But if you're frustrated or just want to have some fun and play around with stuff, that's a good way to do it. And so, I would just get like 1,000,000 gold and then just make like 5,000 skeletons. And it was just like, this is cool.
The cheats were great.
So
the era of cheat codes was a great time to be a gamer.
It's something that we just that doesn't really exist anymore.
No, it's not really a thing.
I remember having like a notepad I'd flip through. I'd write the cheats down in, and I don't know if I was the only one, but all your GTA cheats and
pronounce the game facts. They're
facts.
The cheat codes.
Or if you had like we're off on a tangent now, nostalgia tangent. If you had like the like the book sales at your school, and you get like you see like the really small but thick books that were like 10,000 sheets in this book, and you were like, this is so cool. Like, I don't know if I'd ever need 10,000 sheets, but that's
right.
And then sometimes just some of them like wouldn't work, so it's just like, oh, kind of got scammed.
They're just BS. Yeah.
You got cheated.
Yeah, exactly. Cheated you out of your money for sure. So
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the temple stuff. And then that kind of stuff goes into some of the other buildings too. So like you have like your palace, which is like the main and most important building that can be leveled up to level 3 and that gives you access to more buildings. Houses are where your peasants live. That gives you a source of gold. Like we mentioned, the marketplace, that's where your heroes can buy supplies. You can use an ability called Market Day and get a bunch of money. Blacksmith, where your heroes can upgrade their weapons and armor. You can build an inn, which automatically generates a small amount of income, and heroes pay gold to stay there. Royal Gardens, heroes can meditate there to get a buff, generates gold from flowers. The fairgrounds are cool because you can put on tournaments and your heroes can essentially go there to compete and they level up and win gold. So fairgrounds is a super useful building.
Yeah.
Statues increase the loyalty of your heroes. Guardhouses, we mentioned, are defensive structures that have guards and arrows. Libraries, you can teach your wizards new spells there. And then you get into some of like the different race buildings here. You can have an elven bungalow where you can recruit elves, but you can't have dwarves or gnomes. Dwarven settlements, you can recruit dwarves, but you can't have elves or gnomes. And gnomes, you can recruit little grotesque golem things that will build really fast. But you can't have elves or dwarves. So you kind of got to take a decision about what race you want to have, if that's even available to you. I believe if you build an elven structure, that gambling halls appear in your town, which are untaxable and awful because they just distract all your heroes. And it's like while your town is burning down, all your heroes will just be gambling. Really terrible.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. That's honestly might what happened if society collapsed. Everyone would just go gambling and just be like, well, it's all burning down anyways, so might as well see what gold we can get out of it. Ballista towers, which are just like offensive structures that are just basically upgraded guardhouses. Wizard towers, which you can enchant, will shoot magic at enemies. Trading posts, which will send caravans to your marketplaces. And then I think some of these other buildings were in the DLC. So trading mausoleums, you can revive fallen heroes there. Magic Bazaar, which is like offers other potions. Sorcerer's E-Node offers additional castle spells. Outposts is basically like a backup palace. And then Hall of Champions is where you can set like a mass bounty on a certain type of enemy. So a lot of different strategy here. Was there anything that kind of like stuck out to you guys about things you'd like to do, or?
Well, I was going to ask you guys which, like, did you go elves, dwarves, or gnomes usually? Because like gnomes are generally like available at the very start. You don't have to do anything special.
Right.
I think dwarves, there's some sort of requirement with like your blacksmith or something, and then elves, I think it's like a marketplace and an inn or something. But which one did you guys typically go with?
I think I would always build gnome hovels right away. And I think that's just because when you build one, they'll build 2 additional ones without your permission. And each one can hold 3. And the gnome's whole gimmick is they can build really fast. And I found that in the more difficult missions where your stuff is like constantly burning down and catching on fire, having the extra build speed like help keep your town like together. Whereas like the elven bungalow can only hold like 2 elves, I believe. And the dwarven settlement can only hold 3 dwarves. But I would go for the dwarven settlement sometime because you can get those ballista towers, which if you can pump out a bunch of those, like that basically takes care of your town. So because that's I a lot of times I would go gnomes just because, like you said, that extra build speed, hard to beat, or just having more bodies around to build things. Because like I think at the beginning you normally only get like 2 little townsfolk that are building things for you, and so like the peasants, like the tax collector, are so slow. Like they're so slow.
But I would go dwarves a lot too, just because those ballista towers were pretty awesome, and I want to say they maybe didn't like the guardhouses increase in cost with each one that you build. I want to say the ballista towers maybe didn't or something like that, so you could throw down more of them. But I pretty much almost never went elves because there was really no upside to having them almost. So
yeah, I know I've used ballista towers, but like practical me would definitely go gnomes for the building, and then kid me that was like all in on Lord of the Rings definitely went elves just to have them there, you know? and not
You want Legolas in
yeah,
your
exactly.
town.
Just to have elves and dwarves weren't as interesting to me. But I'm sure there were some situations where I did go with the dwarves. But for practicality, having the gnomes to build, like you guys have both said, and having, so many more units available, like almost immediately versus just 2 elves or 3 dwarves. It was definitely the most practical for the early game.
Yeah.
I find it funny too that like all the races like bring something, like some the gnomes bring like 2 additional gnome hovels, so you can have like up to 9 gnomes at once, and they bring that fast build speed. And the dwarven settlements bring like the ballista towers, which are really useful. And like the funniest thing is like the elves bring gambling to your kingdom. So it's like that's like the most random thing is like I don't remember this in Lord of the Rings. Like Legolas wasn't shooting craps whenever they got to wherever they were going, but
not that we saw anyway.
No, in the extended cuts, maybe.
Exactly. the Peter Jackson, the 5-hour cut.
Right.
The other thing I would do in like the longer games, or like if I did a free play where I was kind of keeping things going, I would generally do like embassies and outposts a lot. Because outposts can hold like 6 additional heroes, and then the embassy like will recruit, and it's not limited to like just the buildings you have built. So if you choose like Crypta and Fervorous, and so you can only recruit like cultists and priestesses, you can in like the outpost and embassy get like healers and barbarians and all of the other things that like were locked to you. And so I would, if I was going for like a longer run, I would generally try to build up, like fill out kind of some of that roster there to get more units from the things that were locked, because then I could, I have the best of both worlds pretty much. So
yeah, and was that I must have missed that building when I was assembling the embassy. That was a expansion building as well, right?
Expansion building too.
Yeah. And those kind of things were incredibly useful. Do you guys have any that we touched a little bit on? Like you can either do like the free play, or there's like a story mode where there are like specific like themed missions. First of all, there was multiplayer. Have you guys ever experienced anything with the multiplayer before?
I don't think I ever played the multiplayer, because I think like at the time, like it was, I mean, we're talking like 2002, like,
right.
And so you were still like having to figure out the multiplayer. And I was not capable of figuring all of that out back then. And then I think more recently, I'm sure there are still people that play the multiplayer, but since I've been playing it as an adult, it's like, well, I don't think anyone's playing this obscure game from 2001.
Is the multiplayer still functional?
I don't know. That's why I wanted to ask if you guys had experience with it.
Oh man, that could have been a stream.
Yeah, I don't know. Right?
That would actually be cool. Yeah, maybe look into it.
Yeah, to like a multiplayer session. Hopefully it's not competitive,
but
because Dylan would destroy me.
I don't even... Like to me, this has always been such a solitary game that I play by myself. Like I don't even know what that would look like in my brain. Like I know there are missions where you play against like a separate kingdom, but it's like, like how do you play against somebody where you don't really have like any control over like what's going on, except for like the strategy would be to just build up gold and then put bounties on all the other dudes' buildings, and so then it's just like
unless it's like two instances and you're racing towards a goal, maybe something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I never did anything with it either. I was too young back then, and online multiplayer games were a struggle. I do remember like cobbling together and figuring out with, all the paper clips and duct tape or whatever it took to get some Stronghold Crusader multiplayer matches going back in the day. And it was like, that was confusing and a lot. And I had to get my dad to help me. And so like, playing games like that back then wasn't very common. So yeah, it was similar, a very kind of solitary, like it wasn't solitary in that I was alone, because I mentioned earlier my sister was really into it too. So both of us were kind of like experiencing it together. But when I was playing, it was just me against the game.
Yeah, I feel like I probably have spent way more time in free play than the campaign. Like the campaign missions are fun, and they throw in like it's cool that they throw in like different limitations on like what you can build and kind of force you into like playing it in a little bit different way than you might normally play it. But I think a lot of the time, especially when I was a kid, crank up because when you go through like the freestyle play, you can choose like what the enemies are. You can choose like the wandering monsters that'll come in, like, and it'll kind of rank them on like, oh, you're just going to have like some giant rats come in. Those are going to be pretty easy. Or you can have like hordes of strong monsters or dragons like attacking you. And then, like back in the day, I could, when I was playing this every day as a little kid, it was like all expert level, stuff,
right?
Just like having fun with it. Now I don't know that I could, pull that off. Probably with enough time and effort, but it's just there's so many options that you can pick from in there, and like little modifiers. Like I think there's a modifier in there that takes away like the building restrictions, where it's like you can have all 4 of the temples and stuff, and so like lets you kind of do some fun random things with it. So
yeah, I do remember probably spending a majority of my time in the free play as well, but going back and I was experiencing some of the missions, and there were 2 specifically that I remember that I hated with an undying passion. So one of them is an expansion mission where I think it's called the 3 Scions.
Yep.
And like immediately when you start your kingdom, there's like 3 level 35 enemies just wandering through your town, just killing everything. And I was like, this is dumb. I hate this completely.
Yep.
And I seem to remember one of my favorite ones, as I believe, was like the mission. I believe there was a mission centered around dragons, and like by halfway through that game, like dragons would just be like swarming your town from like all sides, and it was just pure chaos like the entire time. And some of the missions, like I would say, like that one where there's level 35 dudes just wandering through your town, killing everything, not even giving you a chance. Yeah, not fun. But when
beginner missions, they said that was a beginner mission too. Like.
I think so. And I'm like, no, this is not a beginner mission. This is stupid. But when there's something beauty about like when that chaos is just rolling and like you're killing monsters, but they're destroying your buildings and everything's just kind of going all at once. That's to me is like where this game really shines. It's like it's disorganized chaos, but it's also like a test of like your planning abilities and did you set up your kingdom to survive, and are your heroes on board? Did you set everything up right where they're gonna help defend your kingdom? And I think to me like that's where this game is really good, and that's the feeling I try to describe to people, and nobody ever like wants to play. So which is disappointing because I think this game is unique in this era, and it's really disappointing that we'll probably never get another sequel or another shot at this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, like it's, is it the greatest game of all time? No, but it is a very fun, very unique game. Like there's a lot of like just like every mission, like knock off Sean Connery, like tells you like the objectives and whatever, and what you're going to do. And then like you go do it 30, 45 minutes and you're done, like it's fun.
I'm gonna have to put his voice in there because he would just, really bad, like Scottish dude. Yeah. Just like read the story brief to you, and there'd be other characters talking sometimes, but he was like my best friend by the time I was done with the game. He's great. Does he even have an official name in the lore? I don't know. I guess I have to look it up.
I don't know. It's probably like the steward or something.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, something like that. So, but do you guys have any other kind of closing thoughts on the game? I think we've honestly pretty much covered all the points of it that I wanted to make at least.
I will say I own and have played 2, like the sequel.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. The original Majesty is so much better. Like it does move it into a 3D space, but it just does not have the same charm and feel as the original game. So if you're looking to pick up one, I would say get the original HD version, gold edition or whatever. Like that's the one to go with.
Yeah, I feel like I've dabbled into, like I couldn't tell you anything about it, but I feel like I can picture it, like just kind of what it looked like. But yeah, one is definitely, like the original is definitely the one to play. super available on Steam. Basically, any computer could probably run it. My sister's played the mobile version, and she says it's fine for what it is. So you could try that too if that's your only option. But I agree with Eric. I think that you should at least give this game a shot. If this kind of genre speaks to you at all, it's definitely worth trying as something unique, and it's kind of weird to call it fresh, but at this point it is kind of like a breath of fresh air. They don't really make games like this anymore. It's very of its era, but it's got a charm to it. It's aged, but I think it's aged well, and it's a lot of fun to play. I mean, there's a reason that the three of us bring it up whenever we get the chance, and why we're doing a full episode on it, because we think it deserves it. So if this episode has piqued your interest, if you've listened up to this point, definitely go check it out.
Yeah.
And I think you can get it. I think the most it ever is on Steam is $10.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. It's not.
If it's not on sale, expensive. It's $10. If it is on sale, it's $5.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's certainly interesting. It is very much of its time. It's an interesting oddity in an era where we were having these sim and these RTS games that were kind of starting to be cut from the same cloth, and Majesty was kind of going in a different direction. And I got to tell you, this is probably my favorite cyber lore game. I can't tell you if I ever heard of any of the other ones up until I did research for this. Maybe Heroes of Might and Magic I might have heard of in passing, except for, the juggernaut that was Playboy, whatever that mess ended up being.
Yeah.
We'll do that episode next year, gents, if you're down. But,
for sure. 2004 graphics. I can't wait to go check it out.
Yeah, but Majesty, it definitely has a charm to it. I think the art style is super unique. The music, the voice acting, for that era when everybody was trying to do something like that, I definitely think Majesty stood out. It's just a shame that I truly don't know. I look for sales numbers for this game back then, and there's not really anything. So other than critic scores, I don't really know how successful or how ingrained in people's memories this game was. And like I said, when I told you guys before we started the episode, I searched for podcast episodes about Majesty, and they are very, very few and far between. So not a big audience for it, but I believe we are here as the disciples to spread the good word of Majesty. So
exactly.
If this episode hasn't convinced you, go and give it a shot. Go and check it out, because it's definitely worth it. So
I do have a quick suggestion too. If you like Majesty but you want something newer, check out RimWorld.
RimWorld,
because that is the closest to a Majesty style game. It's very narrative driven, just kind of hey, set this colony of survivors up and just kind of see how things play out. It's the closest to a Majesty feel that I've gotten in a game since Majesty, basically. So it's not 1-to-1, it's not 100%, but it scratches that itch for me.
I have not played it, but I have seen RimWorld played, and I definitely get that vibe from it. And I think there are games today that kind of give you that hands-off feel a little bit, that kind of take control out of your hand. One I experienced recently was Factorio. There's a lot of automation and setting up you can do in that game to a insane degree for things to run themselves, and it kind of gives you that hands-off experience. But nothing really like Majesty since, unless you're playing The Sims or Roller Coaster Tycoon, the most extreme version where you're just setting stuff and leaving it alone, and not micromanaging all that stuff. So, this is a good one. And gentlemen, I'd like to just thank you before we close out here. Give me a little bit of your time tonight to talk about this super obscure game.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
It's always a pleasure talking with you guys. So, any closing thoughts or anything, and then please shill Friendly Neighborhood Gamers, because it's a fantastic show.
I don't really have too many more closing thoughts, but if you enjoy video game conversations like this, that's what we do on our podcast as well. So if you want to hear more gaming content, and some of it about older obscure games like this, definitely would appreciate it if you would check out our podcast. We also have a YouTube channel where we do quick reviews, or more bite-sized content, rankings, things like that over there. We've been having a lot of fun with that recently. So yeah, if you're into gaming, if this piqued your interest, if you enjoyed the conversation, we would definitely appreciate you checking us out. Eric, thank you so much for having us. This was a blast.
No problem, guys. It's always an honor when I can get you guys on. And go check out their show. It's fantastic. 50 episodes. Hopefully there's hundreds more to come. And yeah, you guys are definitely firing on all cylinders on the content game. All that stuff's been fantastic. Yeah, go check out the YouTube. Follow them on wherever you get your podcasts. It's great stuff. So, and then yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you already know where to find me. You can go to linktr.ee/unlockables podcast. All the stuff is there. My Twitter, my Instagram, where I interact with most people. If you want to come check out our Discord server, we've got a nice little tight-knit group of Discord people in there. Hastily made and thrown together because there was a time and place where I thought Twitter was like sinking into the ocean. And I was like, I need to get people onto a lifeboat. So, but Twitter seems to be okay, maybe still. Maybe jury's still out on that. Not sure. But there's a lot of time left for Elon to ruin that for everybody. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Episodes will be coming. We're back, baby, for 2023. I'm super, super excited it's been a long couple of months going without making any kind of content, and it feels good to be back and talking and collaborating with everybody again. So
yeah.
Again, thank you guys so much. And there will definitely be future collaborations coming in the future. I guarantee it.
Can't wait.
Unless you guys are just sick of me right now. So
Nah, bring them on.
Well, definitely there'll be stuff happening whenever new Monster Hunter stuff drops, right, Dylan?
Yes. I'm excited.
Monster Hunter World 2, baby. Let's
Monster Hunter World 2. As we're recording this, Rise comes to the Xbox tomorrow, so I'm excited to like start over and play on a console that I like better. So
I did pick up Game Pass, so I'm excited just in time. And I would like to say actually one last closing thing on Majesty. I recently had the opportunity to pick up a Steam Deck, and I got Majesty working on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Not an ideal way to play that experience. It's
that would get me to buy a Steam Deck.
It is playable, so like it has the little touchpad things on the side,
right?
That function like a mouse. It's just it's very strange. By the end of like my 5 or 6 hours, like I had it down pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say it's not the ideal way to play that game, but
probably
definitely playable. So yeah, if you have a Steam Deck, you don't have an excuse. So go check that out. But from all of us here, from your friendly neighbor gamers, Eric of the Unlockables, thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And remember, it's not just the story of video games; it is the story of you. Have a good night, everybody.